The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and worry. The fluorescent lights hummed above as Emily Carter sat at the admissions desk, her fingers gripping a clipboard so tightly her knuckles turned white. She could barely hold the pen. The nurse, a woman with kind eyes, tried to offer her a reassuring smile. "Miss Carter," she said softly, pointing to the form. "You just need to sign here. We can't move forward with the surgery until we have your consent." Emily's gaze drifted down the paper, the words blurring as tears welled in her eyes. Consent for major heart surgery. Her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, lay in a hospital bed behind those heavy double doors, her tiny chest rising and falling with the help of machines. She looked so small, so fragile, and yet Emily knew her daughter had more courage than she herself could ever muster. Her hand shook as she scrawled her name across the dotted line. She had signed countless papers in her life, apartment leases, job contracts, even school permission slips, but never anything that made her feel so utterly helpless. The nurse gave a small nod of acknowledgement, collected the papers, and walked away. Emily sat there for a moment longer, her chest tightening as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She pulled Lily's teddy bear from her bag and hugged it to her chest. It was worn, one ear flopping more than the other, but it smelled faintly of home, of Lily. Emily pressed her lips to the fabric and whispered, "You'll be okay, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy won't leave." The waiting room was nearly empty, except for a man asleep in the corner and a woman pacing on her phone. But to Emily, it felt like a stadium filled with silence, each tick of the clock louder than the last. Her mind kept circling back to the same thought: what if something goes wrong? What if she doesn't make it? Emily had faced hardship before. She had endured cold winters with no heat, skipped meals so her daughter could eat, and smiled through exhaustion as she worked double shifts at the diner. She had gotten used to people whispering behind her back, pitying her for being a single mother, or worse, judging her. But nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing compared to the fear of losing the one person who made her life worth living. She leaned forward, resting her forehead in her hands, trying to block out the sterile surroundings, when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. Something about the stride, confident yet urgent, made her look up. Her breath caught in her throat. A tall man in a tailored suit strode toward her, his presence commanding the space instantly. His dark hair was swept back, his eyes intense, his jaw set as if carved from stone. Emily's heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned. Alexander Grant, CEO of Grant Enterprises. A name splashed across business magazines, whispered about in boardrooms, and admired, or envied, by nearly everyone. He was a man who built empires, who lived in penthouses and moved in circles she couldn't even imagine. A man whose world was galaxies away from hers. And yet, once upon a time, their worlds had collided. She hadn't seen him in years. Not since that fleeting summer when she was 19 and working as a hotel receptionist, and he was a rising star in his family's company. For a short while, they had been inseparable, pulled together by something she couldn't explain. But she had walked away, convinced their lives were too different, that he deserved someone who belonged in his glittering world. And now, here he was, standing in front of her, his gaze locked onto hers with a mix of urgency and something she couldn't name. "Emily," he said, his voice low but filled with emotion. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call?" Her chest tightened painfully. The sound of his voice stirred memories she had buried long ago. She shook her head, trying to find her strength. "Alexander, you don't belong here. This isn't your problem." He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing as he glanced down at the papers trembling in her hands. His gaze softened for a moment when he noticed the teddy bear clutched against her chest, then hardened again with resolve. "You're wrong," he said firmly. "This is my problem. You shouldn't be facing this alone." Emily rose to her feet, her heart hammering. The distance between them closed, and suddenly it felt as though the air itself had shifted. She wanted to push him away, to remind him that she had been surviving without him all these years, but the truth was harder to deny. She longed for someone to tell her she didn't have to carry this burden by herself. "I've been handling things just fine," she whispered, though her voice cracked under the strain. "Lily is my responsibility. She's all I have. I can't depend on anyone else. Not anymore." Alexander's eyes softened at the mention of Lily's name. He swallowed hard, his voice quieter now, but every word laced with determination. "You don't have to. She's not alone. You're not alone." The words struck her like a lightning bolt, cutting through her defenses. She stared at him, stunned, torn between disbelief and the dangerous flicker of hope rising in her chest. For years, she had convinced herself that she could survive anything on her own. That she had to. But in that moment, standing in the hospital hallway with Alexander's steady gaze on hers, Emily felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Not weakness, not fear, but the possibility of being seen. The possibility of not being alone anymore,